What's up, everybody? Palumbo here, and I am going to show you in this video how to write a Google App script that goes beyond just automating a Google Sheet, but actually reaches out and interacts with Google Drive and Google Documents to use values inside of a spreadsheet to create folders with a certain name, and then put documents inside of those folders that are already populated with some of the values from the spreadsheet. So as we all know, Google App Script is extremely powerful when used inside of a Google Sheet, but it becomes even more powerful once you start stringing multiple Google services together using a single script. So that is what we're going to do today. And the use case that we're looking at is on Kaggle.com. I found this data set of Netflix popular movies. And let's pretend that I am a movie reviewer. Perhaps I have a movie review blog, and I'm going to be writing reviews of a bunch of Netflix content. So I want folders and documents already set up based off of this data set to make it easier for me to go and actually write those blog posts. So the first thing we need to do is I've already downloaded the data set from Kaggle, and to kind of show you what we have here. In this data set, we have the title, the year that particular show or movie came out, the rating, the duration, the genre, the rating on Netflix, a description, the stars inside the movie, and how many votes it's received. So also, I've already created a new folder inside of my Google Drive called Movie List, and this is where I'm going to be creating all of the new folders that my app script is going to be creating for me. So the next thing we need to do, or rather the first thing we need to do, is let's go ahead and open up a new Google Sheet using sheets.new. And I'm going to call this Netflix Movies and Shows. Now we just need to import that data set into here. So I'm going to go upload, and we are going to go to downloads, and it's going to be this CSV right here. And we're going to let this upload. So I'm going to go ahead and say replace current sheet, import data, and there we go. So much like Kaggle told us, we have columns here with the title, the year it came out, the certification or the rating, the genre, description, stars, votes, etc. This is a relatively large data set. We're talking about almost 10,000 rows here. I am not, just for the sake of time, I am not going to be using the entire data set. So let's go ahead and just delete this section here. And we're just going to be using these shows here for the sake of this example. The next thing we need to do is we need to open up the app script editor. And as always, we are going to put in some of the really common variables that I tend to use with all of my scripts, particularly when I'm working with a spreadsheet. And I'm going to call this movie folder create. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to create some spreadsheet variables. And I'm going to put these as constants because they're not going to be changing once they're created. And the first constant I'm going to create is called SS, and this is going to be for the spreadsheet. So I'm going to use spreadsheet app get active spreadsheet. And this will allow me, anytime I want to interact directly with the entire spreadsheet, all I have to use is the variable SS. The next thing I'm going to do is create a constant called sheet, and it's going to be attached to that particular worksheet or tab that I'm going to be working with. So I'm going to use the SS to grab my spreadsheet. Then I'm going to say get active sheet. And then I need one more, and this one's going to be last row. And so I'm going to say sheet get last row. And you should notice exactly how I did that, how they're sort of cascading. So the first constant I created was SS, that grabs the spreadsheet. I then use that variable to grab the active sheet, which is the tab that I'm going to be working with. And then I refer to the sheet variable .getLastRow to get the last row of that spreadsheet. And so let's go ahead and test it right now. I'm going to use the logger service, so logger.log. And I'm going to say the last row is plus sign, and I'm going to put in that variable last row. I am going to save it, and I'm going to run it. And of course, because this is the first time I'm running this particular app script, it's going to ask me to review permissions. So I'm waiting for the pop-up. There it is. So let's review permissions. That's me. And I'm going to allow it. All right, so execution started and completed. The last row is 18. And if we look here, the last row is indeed 18. Excellent. So that's exactly what we want. We no longer need this row here. So the next thing we need to do is, because we're going to be creating folders, that is not a function of the spreadsheet app. That's a function of the DriveApp. So I'm going to create another variable. And this one, I am also going to make a constant. And I'm going to call this root folder. And root folder is going to be this folder right here, my movie list folder. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to call the DriveApp. And I'm going to tell it to get folder by ID. And the way you do that is it obviously takes a value here. It takes the ID of the folder. And the way you actually get that is you go to your folder inside of Google Drive, you look in the URL, and the ID of your folder is this last string of random letters and numbers. And we're going to copy that, and I'm going to drop it in right here. So what this variable is doing is it is basically grabbing that folder in my Google Drive using the ID of that folder, and we are storing it in a variable called root folder. You could certainly be more descriptive with that variable root folder. Typically, when I'm working in Google Drive and everything's happening in sort of like one folder, I just often just call it root folder. All right, so now we need to figure out how we're going to go and get these folders created using values from the spreadsheet. So what we want to do is we want to use all of the values in column A, which is the title of the movie or the show. And we want that to be the name of the folders that we're creating. And then subsequently, we're going to use those to also be the name of the Google document that we're going to create and put inside of those folders. So let's go ahead and do that. And the way that we're going to do this is we need to basically traverse or iterate down column A, and we need to grab those values out in order to use them for the creation of these other objects. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with a for loop. So we're going to say for var I equals 1, as long as I is less than the last row, I plus plus, and then we're going to do curly brackets. Okay, if you're not familiar with for loops, what am I doing here? I'm telling AppScript, I'm going to be doing a set of instructions multiple times. And the instructions are going to go inside of those curly brackets. But so you know, you being the app script, how many times you need to run these instructions, we're going to start with a variable I, which is going to start off as equaling 1. Then in the middle of that of that first line of the for loop, it says I is less than last row. That's the condition that's always going to be evaluated to see if AppScript is going to run those instructions again. So the first time this runs, I is going to be equal to 1. We know that last row is 18. So it's saying, is I less than 18? Yes, it is. So let's run these instructions. In that third part, after the second semicolon, it says I plus plus. This is what's called an iterator. This is programming shorthand with the plus plus after I, and all that means is add 1 to I. And I could easily do something like I equals I plus 1. It means the same exact thing. But in this case, most programming languages have this very convenient kind of iterator shorthand. All I have to do is put I plus plus. So to walk through this once again, let's just say as this runs, first time it runs, I is equal to 1. Then it goes to the second part. Is I less than 18? It is. Let's run it. But that third part says, well, every time it runs, add 1 to I. So the next time I is going to equal 2. Is 2 less than 18? Yes, let's run it. All the way up until I is then equal to 18. Is 18 less than the last row, which also equals 18? No, that's when AppScript knows we're done running this for loop. Awesome. So we have our for loop constructed. Inside of these curly brackets, this is where we're going to put all of the instructions to go and create the folders and the files. So the first thing we need to do is we need to grab the value out of the first column, column A. We want the title of the movie or the show. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say, let title equal sheet get range. Get range is the method or the function that allows you to define a range of cells inside of that spreadsheet. And we're going to use this to basically designate a single cell, and we're going to use it using 2 values. The first value is the row, and the second value is the column. In this case, I want the row to be equal to I. Remember, I is going to constantly be iterating. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to allow this loop to go down the row, go down that column, and check each value. We are only going to be going down 1 column at this time. So that's column 1, which is column A right here. You and I, as humans, look at the spreadsheet and we say column A, column B, column C. AppScript looks at it and says column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's why we are going to say get range of row I, column 1. That's going to give us a single cell, and in that cell we're going to say get the value and store it in the variable title. So every time this runs, this is going to actually go and grab title. We are also going to want to get the description of every movie and television show, and the description is in column G. Column G is the 7th column. So while we're here, let's all go ahead and create another variable called let description equal sheet get range. Row is going to be equal to I, but this time column is going to be equal to 7, and we're going to tell AppScript get us that value as well. So this is, I'm going to go ahead and just put right here a note for myself, creates folder, actually gets values from spreadsheet. And for this particular script, it's not going to be very long, but as your code becomes much longer and more complex, it really helps to put these little comments at various places throughout your code. So if you're trying to figure out what one chunk of code does what, you can put these comments in there. It makes it so much easier to read, particularly if you're coming back to the script after like a month of not looking at it. So this is going to get the values from the spreadsheet. Now what we want to do is we want to create the folders. So let's go ahead and put in some code to do that. And here's the first thing I want to do. I want to put a conditional in here that basically ensures we are not creating a folder or a document called title. So what I'm going to do is inside of this for loop, I'm simply going to say if title does not equal, and that's that exclamation mark equal sign, does not equal title, then go do these other things. So this will ensure that we'll skip over that first row that has title and description in there. So we're going to say if title does not equal title, then we need to create the folder. And the way that we create a folder is we are going to say root folder, which is back up on line 8. We basically said DriveApp, go get this folder. Here's the ID, and then store that in root folder. So we're going to call out root folder, and we are going to say create folder, call it title. Title is the variable that pulls the title from column A, and then let's get the ID of that folder that you just created. So on line 17, we're doing a couple of things here. we are basically saying, hey, DriveApp, go create a new folder for me. I want that folder to be called whatever the variable title is. And then I want you to get the ID of that folder for me because I'm going to probably need it a little bit later. The problem with this line, the way it's currently written, is we're getting the ID, but we're not storing it anywhere. So this actually needs to be a variable. So we're going to say let's call this folder ID. So let folder ID equals root folder dot create folder, call it title, and then give me the ID back. And then what we're probably going to want to do is we are going to want to interact with that folder a little bit later when we start, particularly when we want to start moving documents inside of the folder that we just created. So let's go ahead and do another variable, and I'm just going to call it folder, and we're going to say DriveApp get folder by ID, and then folder ID. And this line number 18, is super similar to line number 8. We are just creating a folder. So I'm sorry, a folder has already been created, but we want to make sure that we can interact with it. So we're using that DriveApp.getFolder by ID, and then we're giving it an ID. In this case, we're using an ID that was just created and is being stored in a variable called folder ID. So this is a very quick and easy way of making sure that once that folder is created, we can then start interacting with it. Okay, so at this point, I actually want to test this out. I want to make sure that my folders are being created and we are using the title. So I'm going to put a line in here called logger.log. And I'm going to say folder name is going to be equal to, well, it should be equal to title. I'm going to put another logger.log in here, and I'm going to say folder ID is folder ID. All right, let's go ahead and save this and let's run it. And first of all, let's look back at my movie list folder here. This is in my DriveApp. There's nothing in there right now. So let's go ahead and run it. Because I'm calling the DriveApp for the first time in this script, I'm just going to ask me to review permissions again. So yes, that's me. Yes, I will allow it. And we should start seeing it run. And we should start seeing that output from Logger. We should see both the folder name and the folder ID. So there we go. So we are seeing these folders being created. Folder name is Cobra Kai, and then here's the folder ID, this string of characters, and execution is now completed. So if we go look at our movie folder, and I'm probably going to need to refresh this, we now have a bunch of new folders that we've just created. So let's go ahead and look at Cobra Kai. We'll click on this. Up here, we have the folder ID of it's 1A5NVW is what it starts off with. If we go look over here in our logger.log output, we have 1A5NVW. So we know that that is in fact the folder ID for that Cobra Kai folder that was just created. Good. This is exactly what we want the script to be doing at this point in time. It is now creating folders for us. So let's go back into this folder here, and I'm going to delete all of these for right now because I'm going to run the script again and I don't want duplicate folders to be created. So now we know that this script will go down column A, grab the title, create a folder for us, and name that folder whatever the value of title is. So now what we want to do is we want to start creating Google Documents and put them inside of that folder with some specific text on that document. So let's go ahead and write the script to do that. The first thing that we're going to do is we need to create the document, and we're going to do it in a similar way that we did for creating the folder. We're going to say let doc ID equal, and this time we're going to call the document app, and we are going to say create, and we need to give it a name. So we're going to say use the value of title, because that's what we want it named. And once again, we're going to ask AppScript to go ahead and grab the ID for us. So it's going to create the file, give it the name that we want, and then it's going to pass back the ID. And like we did previously, I'm going to do let document equal document app. Let's see. Actually, no, we need to do open by ID. And of course, we have doc IDs, the document ID stored in our variable doc ID. And just a quick note on this one. Anytime you are working with Google Docs, you're creating them, you're updating them, particularly if you're updating them, you always have to open the doc. This doesn't necessarily mean the doc is going to open up inside of your browser. This basically tells the DriveApp or tells AppScript to tell the document in the DriveApp, hey, I need to open this document because I'm going to be doing stuff with it. So anytime you're going to be appending information, adding information to it, you have to have this open by our open command. So in this case, we're using open by ID. So we're going to say let document equal document app dot open by ID. We give it the ID. Now we want to put a bit of text in there. So I'm going to say let paragraph equal document dot get body append paragraph, and we're going to drop in the description. So what's happening here? When the document app looks at a Google Doc, it looks at it essentially in three different components: the header, the footer, and the body. So we're using the previous line, let document equal open this document by ID. So we're saying document dot get the body of it. We're not messing with the header. We're not messing with the footer. Get the body, and then append this paragraph using the value of description into the body of that document. That's what we're doing there. And then we need to make sure that document is placed inside the folder, because right now you've just created it in Google Drive. You have not created it inside of the folder. So we're going to say DriveApp get file by ID, and we're going to use that doc ID one more time. And then we're going to say move to, and we're going to say folder. Now folder relates back up to line 18, where we said DriveApp get folder by ID, and we stored that into folder. That's where we're using it down here. We are using that variable to tell the DriveApp exactly where we want it to move that newly created document to. Okay, so at this point, let me go ahead and clean up some of this extra white space. We have a script now that we know is creating folders for us. Now we have line 23, which says, hey, go and create a new document. Call it the same thing as title. Give me the ID. The next line, we are grabbing that document using open by ID. We are on line 25, we're adding some text to it, which is the value from the description column, column G. And then we are moving that into the folder that we've just created. So at this point, we should have a fully functioning script. So let's go ahead and save it. Let's run it. And because this is the first time I'm calling the document app, I have to go through and give it the same permissions, which I'm going to allow it. This should start the script running, and we're still seeing that logger.log output. Notice it's taking a little bit longer this time, and that's because once it creates the folder, it has to go create the document, add the text to it, and then move it. So let's go ahead and look in our folder here in Google Drive, and you see the folders are being created. We can go into Cobra Kai, and we see a document called Cobra Kai. We can click on that document. Now I could tell that this document has been edited, and I don't know if you caught that. Normally, when you open up a Google Doc, there's a little bit of gray text there that sort of like kind of helps you get started. That disappeared immediately. It is very common though, anytime you are working with the Google Drive, particularly Google Documents, if you're updating text into it, it takes a little bit of time for that text to show up. So the script just completed execution. Let's go back over here. Let me go back up one folder. Let's go ahead and look at Stranger Things. So that folder was created. We have a document here called Stranger Things. And if I click on that document, we have the description. When a young boy disappears, his mother, a police chief, and his friends must confront terrifying supernatural forces in order to get him back. And that is exactly the value that we have over here inside of column G. So with this script, we have pulled values outside, or pulled values from our spreadsheet. We have created folders, and then inside of those folders, we've created Google Documents. And inside of those Google Documents, we have taken values from the spreadsheet and we have put them inside of the Google Documents. This is what I mean by it's wonderful to automate spreadsheets using AppScript, but it becomes so much more useful and powerful when you have a script that calls in multiple Google services to do a number of things. And remember, this data set had close to 10,000 rows. So if you were working on a project that required either document creation or folder creation for all the values or rows in a spreadsheet, and you had about 10,000 of them, nobody wants to do that. But here we did. Here we wrote an app script of less than 30 lines, and that includes comments as well, and it did it for us. So I hope this video was useful. I hope this gives you some ideas about how to work smarter, not harder. If it did, as always, please like, please subscribe. I'm always trying to create useful videos to help people just work a little bit easier. And I hope this accomplished that. So one other thing too, if you have questions, if you have comments, please do not hesitate to leave me a comment below. I am really good, or try to be really good, about answering questions. I've even gotten on some calls with people who've wanted to use my example scripts to solve a real problem in their business. So I'm always there to help. Please do not be afraid to ask. And I'm also going to make sure that this code is stored in a GitHub gist. I'll link it below. So you can also just copy and paste it, and you can start exactly where I left off. So as always, thank you for your time today watching this video. I hope it was really helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.